You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. We are live here on the Pace Radio Networks, Facebook, YouTube, on locations. There's lots, don't worry. Can't miss us. Other than that, how are you doing, Rev Kelly?
Good morning, good Monday morning. It's a great day. How are you?
I'm not too bad. I got a little bit of a head cold starting.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Well, it's that time of year. Lots of
It
elderberry syrup if you have some.
Elderberry. All right, I'll write that down.
Okay, good. It's good for you.
Yes. So, yesterday, Cannabis Temple, how'd things go?
We had a great day. Thank you so much for coming and bringing your squishy machine. You and Mr. Squishy came. It was so interesting to watch that happen. My goodness.
Yeah. At one time there, I looked around, there was 8 people standing around the table, just watching and asking questions or taking pictures or doing video. And some people said that they're going to be looking for Mr. Squishy come fall harvest time.
Of course. Yeah. Well, I'm sure that some of them had never even seen anything like that before.
Yeah, that's what someone said to us. Like, we had some cannabis that was brought in that people wanted to squish. It was just too dry.
Yeah.
And that's that's a learning experience for them, as far as that, because that particular person didn't know.
Right.
So
we'll be back.
Yeah, we squished a sample. We squished a sample of a product that Mr. Squishy had.
Yeah.
And squished it out and then gave it to the fella.
Oh, isn't that nice? Yeah.
So he had some dabs to do, because he brought in some to do and we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But
That's what happens in cannabis community. You share, you barter, you trade, you learn from each other, and that's what we're building out. It's going to be great.
Yeah, exactly. Well, other than that, what do you say? Get on with the news?
Yes.
All right. This is a bit of a follow-up story. It's been covered in the past, and it was very disturbing when it first came out. And I don't know if you remember, but there was a situation where a fellow was charged with cannabis while he was in hospital dealing with cancer.
Yes.
Couldn't believe it. Headline says, cancer patient dies 3 weeks after hospital room raid seized his marijuana extracts. They raided his hospital room.
And they're saying the gentleman's name was Greg Bretz. He died last week, and they're saying that they're hoping that this story will inspire the Kansas legislature to put compassion for terminally ill people over outdated war on drugs politics.
Big time. I didn't know Mr. Bretz, he says, as well as I wish I did. I only encountered him in the last month of his life after he was cited by Hayes Police the week before Christmas on criminal charges of using cannabis extracts while he was flat on his back in a hospital room dying of inoperable cancer.
Wow. Police, called in by hospital staff, confiscated his vaping device and some THC-containing paste that he ate on bread to alleviate his symptoms. This after a doctor told him to do whatever he wanted if it made him feel better, because there was nothing more the medical science could do for him.
This fellow, he says he spoke with Hayes Police Chief Don Schreibler several days after the story ran, and he said the officer who wrote the citation was uncomfortable about it, and the same day sent an email to prosecutor's office asking the charges be dismissed.
Wow. Now, apparently, the prosecutor agreed at some point, but nobody told Mr. Bretz.
He was cited on the Monday before Christmas. He wasn't informed the charges would be dropped until Tuesday, a week later, 3 days after this guy's story ran and brought some unwelcome national attention to Hayes, its hospital, and its police department. I guess so. And in the meantime, a friend helping with his care told him that he had tried to contact the prosecutor about it but couldn't get a call back.
Wow. So while Hayes ultimately undid the mistake, Mr. Bretz spent his final Christmas believing he was still under criminal charges. Now, one thing that Schreiber told this gentleman does resonate. The young officer told the chief he felt he had no choice but to issue a criminal citation under the circumstances, and he followed the rules when he saw the law had been broken.
Sometimes you just need to look the other way.
Right?
In this case, it's the law that's broken. Exactly. Kansas is one of the only 3 states that doesn't have an allowance for the use of marijuana and its extracts by the terminally ill. Come on, Kansas. Get your act together.
The state is unnecessarily cruel and senseless in that regard. Cancer patients are routinely prescribed debilitating opiates, hard drugs for pain control, and nobody seems to have a problem with that. Nobody, that is, except the patients themselves.
Yep, and when you're undergoing treatment for cancer, 2 of the biggest issues are pain and loss of appetite, and cannabis relieves pain and can make you hungry.
Now, opiates have to be taken in larger and larger doses to achieve the same pain control. You suffer withdrawal if you take them. They cause nausea, vomiting, constipation, none of which is conducive to extending or enhancing the quality of life on the final downslope. None.
Exactly. You just die as a zombie.
Yeah.
In the last 16 years, 23 bills have been introduced on the subject in Kansas. According to the legislative research report, only 2 have passed. One legalized some CBD products, and the other specified they can't take your kids away for using CBD.
Jesus. Oh my God. Even the idea about that, taking your kids away. But while CBD is a cannabis extract product, it's virtually devoid of the ingredient, of course, that makes it useful to the terminally ill people. The legislature had an interim committee on the subject last year, but it didn't amount to much. This writer says he called the legislative research on Tuesday morning. There are currently no medical cannabis bills pending. None in Kansas.
None. Yeah. There seems to be 2 big hurdles to overcome. Making sure that nobody uses cannabis for enjoyment, and 2, making sure Democrats don't get any credit.
Oh my God.
Fuck the patients, right? Like, what the?
They don't even think about them. They don't even consider the patients. The humans. They're humans. Yeah. Going on to, is that the gentleman there?
Yeah. Which,
terrible.
Yeah, we'll just finish that off right there. Yeah. That's charging a fella while he's laying in the hospital, dying, and expected to die at any time.
At any time. And they took his medicine. They took his
medicine from him. Did that push his date of death sooner?
Yeah. He had no comfort. He had no cannabis comfort at the end of his life. Just opiates and whatever they could fill him full of. Yuck.
Well, I hope something like this initiates change.
Yep.
And I'm going to be watching, see what happens with Kansas, because they need change. So
this gentleman doesn't die in pain.
On to our next. Yeah. Like, was he a threat to society?
No.
I gotta get away from this story.
Okay. We'll go to something.
All right, on to the next story on the marijuana moment. Lawmakers in 3 more states filed psychedelics reform bills in 2023.
Yes, so happy. The list of states where lawmakers are pursuing psychedelic reform this session continues to grow, with new bills being filed in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Oklahoma.
Yep, more than a dozen state legislators have seen psychedelic proposals introduced in the first weeks of 2023 as the local decriminalization movement expands, bringing in legislators from diverse political backgrounds.
So here's the rundown from Connecticut, which is a placeholder bill from Republican Michelle Cook, who serves as deputy speaker, would appropriate a currently unspecified amount of state funds to the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services for the current fiscal year to establish a psychedelic-assisted therapy pilot program.
The legislation, which will be referred to the House Public Health Committee after the final text is released, is more limited than a separate psychedelic proposal that another Connecticut lawmaker intends to file. Now, according to the placeholder description of that measure, the bill will seek to legalize the use of psilocybin for medical and therapeutic purposes, including but not limited to the provision of physical, mental, or behavioral health care.
They said that last year they had a large-scale bill that included provisions to set the state up to provide certain patients with access to psychedelic-assisted treatment, including MDMA and psilocybin. So it was there already.
They're getting there, yeah.
Yep.
Senator Patricia Gillen and Rep. Lindsay Sabdosa recently introduced legislation drafted in concert with the advocacy group Bay Staters for Natural Medicine that would legalize a series of psychedelics for adults 18 and older.
Wow. And that's in Massachusetts. There's a quote here saying
Going
from
down
Davis,
to Oklahoma?
Yeah, yes. From
right.
Oklahoma, the Republican Daniel Pay is again seeking to enact psychedelics reform in Sooner State, filing legislation on Thursday that's been dialed back from the version he sponsored last session to exclude broad decriminalization provisions and focus more narrowly on psilocybin research. So they just really went for that criminal element. They're going now for the research element. It's smart.
Yeah. The bill would let universities and research facilities that contract with Oklahoma institutions of higher education carry out studies into the therapeutic potential of psilocybin and psilocin for PTSD and traumatic brain injury, early stage dementia, palliative care, end of life care, opioid use disorder, chronic pain, severe depression, anxiety, and obsessive compulsive disorder.
Wow. Okay, but so here, any approval studies would need to involve clinical trials, a review of the existing scientific literature, and the science of cultivation, synthesis, extraction, and processing of psilocybin and psilocin, as well as fungi, yeasts, and other naturally occurring source of organisms of these molecules. That's a huge study, Al.
Yeah, and those people will be protected. Yeah, and those people would be protected by law, so they wouldn't be prosecuted like a guy laying in the hospital.
Wow.
Yeah. While
this
the bill
is the right
no
way
longer,
to do it.
Yeah, while the bill no longer couples research with decriminalization, people who face prosecution over psilocybin possession would be afforded an affirmative defense if they can demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence that they have a medical condition that falls under the list. So if you get busted, and you can prove that you're using it medically, then they're going to let you out.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Right. Who's the next one on the list here? Missouri.
That was it.
Yeah. Okay.
We did Missouri.
We did. Yeah, we did. Yeah, that's it. I was thinking. That was quick. I was thinking that there was a little more to that one.
No.
So there you go. At least they're allowing it and they're doing the research at the same time.
That's right.
They always say, with the cannabis, and as we know,
yeah,
you need more research. Need more research. Yeah. Well, cannabis has been legal here in the country for patients for over 20 years.
Wow.
Why not? Why didn't we create a program to allow patients to get involved in order to maybe get some of that evidence? You got
case studies,
people in the program.
Yeah.
Or at least growing on their own. They got hundreds of thousands that are actually in the program that they could use. I'm sure people would volunteer.
There's so many. They just have to go to the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club.
Yeah.
Just get all the research out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? There's so much. So much.
All right. On to our next story. This one comes from the Cornell Chronicle. When recreational cannabis is legal, codeine demands drop.
Wow. States that permit recreational use of cannabis see a reduction in demand for prescription codeine, which is, of course, an opiate with a high potential for misuse.
I guess. Published in January 19th in Health Economics, a new study finds a significant reduction in pharmacy-based codeine distribution in states that have legalized recreational cannabis use. The finding is promising from a public health policy perspective because misuse of prescription opiates annually contributes to more than 10,000 overdose deaths.
And
And they're
21,
worried about cannabis.
and they're worried about that. 21 U.S. states have passed recreational cannabis laws, and legislatures in other states are considering similar measures, said doctoral candidate Shaiman Rahman. A reduction in the misuse of opiates will save lives. Now, he's affiliated with the Cornell Jeb E. Brooks School of Public Policy and the lead author, saying our research indicates that recreational cannabis laws substantially reduce distribution of codeine to pharmacies, an overlooked potential benefit to legalizing recreational cannabis use.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or making high dose edibles available to people who are dealing with opiate addictions.
Yes, please. Harm
The
reduction.
study is believed to be among the first to separately examine the impact of recreational cannabis laws on shipments of opioids to hospitals, pharmacies, and other endpoint distributors. Previous studies have focused on medical cannabis laws or use of opioids for subsets of consumers, such as Medicaid beneficiaries.
Of course. The research analyzed data from the Drug Enforcement Administration's automation of reports and consolidation order system, which tracks the flow of controlled substances in the U.S. Here are some key findings from states that passed recreational cannabis laws.
A 26% reduction in pharmacy-based distribution of codeine and as much as a 37% reduction after recreational cannabis laws have been in effect for 4 years. 37%.
What? Minimal impact on distribution of other opiates such as oxycodone, hydrocodone, and morphine in any setting.
Minimum impact on codeine distribution by hospitals, which often have less permissive policies than pharmacies.
This needs to be everywhere. This information needs to be everywhere right now. This is huge. This is huge. To say this.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, they say this finding is particularly meaningful, according to senior author Coleman Drake of the University of Pittsburgh School of Public Health. Where previous studies have focused on more potent opiates, codeine is a weaker drug with a higher potential for addiction. It indicates people may be obtaining codeine from pharmacies for misuse, and that recreational cannabis laws reduce this illicit demand.
Wow. Now, additional authors on the research, it talks about them. McLean saying that while cannabis and opiates can be used to minimize chronic pain symptoms that aren't equivalent in the impact on health, increasing legal access to cannabis may shift some consumers away from opiates and towards cannabis. Boom! While all substances have some risks, cannabis is used arguably less harmful to health than non-medical use of prescription opiates. This needs to be everywhere. That is such an important article.
And the research, it says, is supported by the National Institute on Drug Abuse of the National Institute of Health, which I believe is a federal agency.
Jeez. Can someone send this to Kansas? Someone needs
to send that article to
Kansas.
Holy. Wow. It's just, I'll be shaking all day.
Basic codeine.
Story.
Wow.
Yeah. Well. All right, on to the next story from MJ Biz Daily. How marijuana companies are building brand loyalty by selling seeds to consumers.
Good job. Several cannabis companies have added cannabis seeds to their line of product offerings, even though the move at first blush might seem counterintuitive. I guess so.
Yeah. Why, for one, would cannabis companies want consumers to grow their own plants? Exactly. Yeah, there's a logic here. Consider how people who grow their own vegetables also shop for fresh veggies at a grocery store or farmer's market. True.
Yeah, they want them to have that at home. Everybody who's got a home garden during the spring and summer grows tomatoes, But 98% of the tomatoes they buy are at the stores. Carl Giannone, who's the co-founder of Trade Roots, a cannabis company based in Wareham, Massachusetts, he says that sells seeds direct to customers.
Yeah. It says here, if growing tomatoes makes them want to buy tomatoes, then I want to let them grow. An increasing number of companies are offering seeds thanks to a change in federal policy. The move can be profitable for some, while others are doing it to build brand loyalty and share genetics.
I like that. In November, Berner, who is the co-founder and CEO of the international cannabis brand Cookies, he announced that his company would start selling seeds for home cultivation. Of course, Cookies launched its seed bank the day after Thanksgiving on Black Friday. Ooh.
In an
Look for
email,
the seeds.
yeah. In an email to MJ Biz Daily, Berner said the launch broke some internal records. The demand is definitely there, and it's been strong. Berner's approach to help cannabis fans take their enthusiasm to the next level.
He's saying we want everyone to feel empowered to explore the plant and get into the next level of education when it comes to cultivation.
Right.
Saying it's more than just buying clones. It's about the experience from start to finish. Berner is brilliant. That's brilliant.
Well, yeah, you almost gotta think if a patient is or a person is growing their own cannabis, and then they run out, they might want that same product, so they'll go to the store and buy
Right.
the same product.
Right. They love it.
Yeah,
Smart.
yeah. See, the cannabis seed business became a viable option last year when the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration clarified that it's legal to sell and distribute cannabis seeds across the U.S. Really?
Huh.
Wow. A previously regulatory gray area is now crystal clear, and law-abiding cannabis companies are wise to seize the opportunity. I wonder if they're looking at it as it's a seed, it's not a plant. That's how they do it here.
Right.
It's not viable. It's just a seed.
I've never heard of a Canadian company doing this. I don't know if they could do this.
Well, I know at one time.
Well,
Anyway, yeah.
before legalization, but I can't think of, because I think this would work up here, but I don't know what the law is. Do we have a gray area with this?
Well, it's you're supposed to be able to buy the seeds at the legal locations. I know that there was a big question about all that because of the fact that you got to have roots in order to be a viable plant.
And can they give the seeds away is what I'm wondering. You buy a doobie from Cookies or whatever, and then you get the seeds.
Well, they can't use the seeds I wouldn't think they could use the seed as an enticer.
That certainly couldn't do that. So interesting. This is really interesting because our laws are different than the U.S., but it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Overall.
Now we do have seed wholesalers. I used to have a seed wholesaler as a sponsor here on the network.
Oh.
At one time. Yeah. And their retail business is still going.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're legal. That's fine. Seeds.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On to our last story before we go to a break. And it also from the marijuana moment. It says the Air Force is granting 4 more marijuana waivers to recruits who test positive for THC than expected under the pilot program. Well, it just means more people being honest, maybe.
That's right. The Air Force is granting far more cannabis waivers to recruits than it expected. They launched a pilot program that's meant to give more leniency to would-be service members amid the state legislation movement.
Yeah, the program launched last year, authorizing the branch to grant waivers to recruits who test positive for THC metabolites during their initial drug screening and giving them 90 days before they are retested. Previously, Air Force candidates who tested positive would be automatically barred from joining. Yeah, so they're allowing them to come back and do another test.
Now, the Air Force said that it anticipated that roughly 50 recruits would be eligible for the waiver per year based on past annual drug screening data. But within just 3 months from September 30th to December 31, it granted the second chance to 43 applicants.
There you go. They've already got the numbers in the first 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, they say the trend could mean as more states adopt more leniency towards cannabis and THC derivatives, we anticipate a continued increase in these waiver requests. Air Force recruiting spokesman, according to Air Force recruiting service spokesperson Chrissy Kate, according to her. I just heard some odd noise. That's what I'm looking around for. What was that?
Sounds like some coyotes over there, Al. It does. Not all recruits are eligible for the waivers. Only those who score high enough on their qualification tests, they don't have convictions on their records, and otherwise meet enlistment standards qualifying under the pilot program, and thus last until September 2024.
At that point, Air Force will decide whether to make the policy permanent. Might as well. If they do, it would align them with other divisions of the military that would similarly revise cannabis policies like the Army, the Navy, and the Marine Corps. Makes sense.
Well, a lot of these people that are in the Army suffer from PTSD and use cannabis for that. So it's nice to see this and to hear this. For the Air Force in particular, the waiver program represents a notable development as the branch constituted a policy in 2019 barring service members from using even non-intoxicating CBD, even if it's derived from hemp and is therefore federally legal under the Farm Bill. So they couldn't even use like the hemp shampoo or topicals. They couldn't have that even.
Yeah. Back in 2021, a Massachusetts Air Force base released a notice stating that service members can't even bring hemp-infused products like shampoos, lotions, and lip balms to the base. Even if it's for your pet, it's still illegal. Like, what the?
Yep.
Shampoo.
That was the law. I remember that.
The shampoo?
Yep. No way. But that because the Farm Bill sort of opened the gates for everybody to put CBD in it, and then they said nope. But now they're changing it. They're offering it. So that's great. Really great.
Yeah. So there you go. The Air Force is going to allow recruits to give them a second chance.
Right. Pardons.
Yeah, that's right. Good stuff. All right. Well, I think we're ready for break. That's it.
Please.
All right. Kaylee and I are going to take our joint session, and we'll see you on the other side of this commercial break. You're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News here on the Pace Radio Network and CBGTV.com.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more. We've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Pace Radio is the people advocating cannabis education radio network.
Are you watching television on Roku, Fire, maybe an Apple TV or even Chromecast? If you are, then download the Boxcast app and search for CBG TV.
CBG TV broadcasting to a worldwide audience. Find us at cbgtv.com. You're watching the Cannabis Broadcasting Group here at cbgtv.com.
Did you know that the Pace Radio Network isn't just a radio network? That's right, because most, but not all of our programming is now done via video and is then podcasted at paceradio.net. So if you want to watch our programming, you'll find us on the Pace Radio Network's Facebook page, plus the show's own page, and you'll find us live on the network's YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can find it all, video and audio, at paceradio.net.
Legacy 420 have an awesome array of cannabis-infused beverages, from pop to Nature's Nectar's teas, all in amazing flavors. What a selection! We even have a delicious mango-infused juice, and let me tell you, it's delicious.
Everything is infused in-house, so we buy our syrup from, the same place where everybody else buys their syrup for their pop, and the infusion is done in the lab. It's all canned here, labeled here, produced 100% on Tynaniga.
We have two lines of drinks. One is called our Nature's Nectar. That was our original line that we came out with. And then we also have a line under the Red E brand. We have them in 10 milligrams, 30 milligram, and 60 milligram cans.
What a great selection for a get-together with friends or after a long day. Remember, if you want to wet your whistle with on-site lab-tested products, come see your trusted partner. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
And we will continue with 5 more stories here on psychedelics and cannabis education and news, including some stuff on surgeries, recreational cannabis sales here in Canada, and what's going on in Mississauga. But first, we are going to talk about some new guidelines for patients who are going in for surgery. And they've got a notice here saying that new guidelines suggest heavy cannabis use be disclosed before surgery. I know, Kelly, that before I do any procedures at the hospital, it's on my list of drugs that I take for my medicines, cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So important. And dentists, too, while we're talking about it. It's suggesting that
Yes.
anesthesiologists are asking patients about their cannabis use before surgery. Yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I know that my dental hygienist, when I go in there, we're talking cannabis and dogs.
Really? They always ask about that? That's good.
Every time I go in there, we're talking cannabis and dogs.
It's so important.
Yeah, it is. Exactly. The new guidelines were released this month by the American Society of Regional Anesthesia and Pain Medicine. Dr. Samer Narrows, chair of the Center for Pain Medicine at Western Reserve Hospital in Cayuga Falls, is president of that organization.
So the guidelines recommend that anesthesiologists ask patients whether they use cannabis, how much, how often, how recently, what type of cannabis, and whether it was smoked or ingested. The guidelines also call for postponing elective surgery if a patient arrives high and educating pregnant patients about the risk of using cannabis on their baby. Ouch.
Yeah. There we go. So what are the new guidelines for cannabis use in surgery? This was a consensus report from an expert panel that we created from a variety of anesthesiology practice backgrounds and patient advocates. We thought it was time to give direction to the anesthesiologists and surgeons about how to handle patients that show up for a surgical procedure and they are utilizing cannabis, whether medically or recreationally.
Right. So they're asking why are guidelines needed. And they're saying we are seeing more patients are using cannabis, especially for recreational use in most of the states now, some form of legalization of cannabis in general. So there are an increased number of patients who are utilizing cannabis showing up for surgery.
Now, they say they've also noticed that in the last few years, the potency of the THC in the available cannabis market is much higher than we used to have a decade ago, and we do not fully understand all the potential interactions with the THC and anesthetic and other medications. So this raised a red flag that they might have some serious interactions.
Also saying that we also got a lot of observations from practicing physicians of interactions during anesthesia. Some patients, and they don't know which ones that they're utilizing cannabis, have a different outcome in the recovery room. That might be more pain, more violence, more vomiting. Wow.
Oh, wow, really?
Wow.
All those factors made us create a task force to create guidelines as a roadmap on how to handle these situations. So here's the guidelines.
Wow. How soon will anesthesiologists begin using these guidelines?
Well, their understanding is that some institutions already have some form of local guidelines. These are the first U.S. guidelines that a management of cannabis before surgery. He says he was hoping it would be implemented as soon as it released, and he expects widespread adoption of it.
Okay, and the particular guidelines took almost 2 years to develop. Most of the available literature is basic science or animal science, and the clinical data is unfortunately mostly still observational data, and there are more acceptable applications of cannabis, saying I would expect there to be more research. As we get more data, we will update the guidelines.
Yeah. This is that only recently have medical schools added the pharmacology of cannabis to the curriculum. Well, that's good. That's a good part. That's good to know.
It's good news.
So what are the problems? This is what I was waiting for. And what can happen with heavy cannabis use? He says, I'm not saying that every patient who uses cannabis will have a bad outcome. There are some patients who didn't tell their surgeon and didn't have a problem. However, they identified 3 subsets of patients and might not have the best outcome with the anesthetic and surgery.
Okay, so the first group are those that show up at the time of surgery and they're acutely intoxicated. So if you just smoked cannabis in a big dose, especially with high potency, you could be intoxicated. There could be some delusions or saying paranoia. So
say the second group are the patients who have cannabis use disorder, which means that they are heavy users. These patients can develop a tolerance to cannabis from chronic use. So we know from literature that if you develop a tolerance to cannabis, you may have more pain in the recovery room, even for minor procedures. We would recommend a multi-modal approach in trying different medications or even nerve blockers.
Okay. The third set are acute smokers. There's data to show that in the first 2 hours after smoking a joint, you will have a high incidence of increased heart rate. Arrhythmias and high blood pressure are known risk factors to develop heart attack. This is a very scary article. I'm so sorry. I've had a hard time reading it the whole time. There is a risk for you during the stress of surgery, and we would recommend postponing the surgery for at least 2 hours. So just a little bit of
I know, like when I go in for my procedures over the years, I've always backed off. Like for example, that morning, if I'm going in, then I may not medicate before I go, but I didn't change anything the day before.
Right.
And all my procedures for my Crohn's and for my cancer, only once did I ever have an issue with the anesthetic.
Okay. But you always let everybody know this is, I use cannabis.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's what the main part of that article is, to just make sure that you're telling your anesthesiologist, dentist, doctor, whatever. The rest of it can just be
how
it could affect you
as a patient. Yeah. I took it as an opportunity to be able to talk to a professional, a doctor of some sort, about cannabis.
Yeah. Right.
Educate, even nurses when you're in the hospital, right? Pass
Teaching.
the word.
Yes.
All right, on to our next story. Yes, that's right. Never ends. New studies show psilocybin increases music pleasure in depression patients.
I like this. The relationship between psychedelics and music is not as unidirectional as we might think. While music has been shown to be a valuable aid in psychedelic psychotherapy, it can also be used as a means to obtain concrete evidence of the psychedelics derived benefits on mood in mental health patients. This was shown by the study illustrated in this article conducted by a research team at the Imperial College in London.
Yeah, the benefits of music on mood have been known since ancient times. By eliciting emotional responses in listeners, music leads to improvements in mood and decreases stress with positive emotions as the main results of the experience. I have to agree with that.
Yeah.
When I'm at that point and whatever, just I'll put music on.
There you go.
Yeah.
Depression, however, is known to decrease a completely extinguished music-related pleasure. Around 70% of major depressive disorder patients present anhedonia as a symptom, i.e. the incapacity to experience pleasure. Oh no, and it has been shown to be particularly hard to treat, with its presence leading to an even worse response to the treatments of predominantly used today in like SSRIs. Oh dear.
Yeah. As the pleasure evoked during music listening greatly relies on dopamine systems in the brain, the scenario of lowering dopamine and dysfunctional reward processes in depressed patients make it difficult to experience pleasure. This is indeed thought to be the main biological mechanism underlying that anhedonia, I can't pronounce that word either, Kelly, phenomenon experienced by MDD patients.
So psilocybin and ketamine in conjunction with a psychological intervention have already been shown to reduce that word, and anhedonia. We're just going to try. LSD has also been investigated for its effects on music-evoked pleasure by a research team from the Center of Psychedelic Research at the Imperial College London. However, in 2022, the same research team performed a similar study. This time, the potential of psilocybin therapy for music-evoked pleasure was assessed not in healthy controls, but in an actual treatment-resistant depression patients. Wow.
Wow. 19 individuals affected by treatment-resistant depression were recruited. After psychological preparation, they received a low dose of psilocybin, which is about 10 milligrams, followed by a high dose of 25 a week later. The effects of it were investigated employing subjective tests and questionnaires, as well as collecting MRI neuroimaging data.
A week before the first dosing, 2 fMRI scans were performed, one with and one without music. These were repeated on the day following the second dosing. Now, the team focused on their investigations on a specific brain area, the nucleus accumbens, a part of the ventral state, a part of the brain, a brain structure responsible for rewarding processing after a major involvement in music evoking pleasure. Now, after each scan, music evoked pleasure and other related emotions, as well as their absence, were assessed with the Geneva Emotional Music Scale used by participants to rate the feelings evoked by the music. And the Snaith-Hamilton Pleasure Scale was employed prior to each scan to assess the absence of pleasure in that area of the brain, typical to psychopathological disorders. Wow, tongue twister.
Wow. Yeah, the effects of the psilocybin with and without music were compared to the placebo with and without music by looking at both the scales just mentioned. And the functional cognitivity analysis of the fMRI scans obtained, with functional cognitivity being the temporal collaboration between events occurring in the brain.
This is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
A thorough analysis of the subject reports revealed a correlation between decreased anhedonia and an increased level of music-evoked emotions after treatment with psilocybin. Wow.
Yeah. Neuroimaging-wise, the nucleus accumbens was found to have a decreased post-traumatic functional cognitivity, with areas constituting the default mode network, a main brain network accounting for the symptoms typical of depression, such as rumination, and already found to be disrupting by psychedelics in multiple studies. Mm-hmm.
So the purpose of the study just described was to gain evidence of the potential of psilocybin therapy to enhance emotional responses to music, usually low or absent in depression. And the results showed a correlation between psilocybin treatments and decreased anhedonia, which is the increased level of music evoking emotions. Okay.
Yeah. Got the word out. These are useful insights for further studies, which will likely be directed to understanding the relationship between the changing cognitivity between the nucleus accumbens, the DMN, and the reduced anhedonia. I got
so
a few off you.
All the science words basically do mushrooms like music.
Yeah, exactly. Mushrooms like music, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. Music, music it's a universal language for so many. It brings so many people together.
Yeah.
This morning on Facebook, I see a friend of mine is posting pictures of his brother, who had was a guitar player, lead guitar and singer in a band, and it was all memories because unfortunately his brother ended up with a tragic death. So. And he was posting memories and seeing him up there on the stage and soaked hair and the expressions on his face. It just brought back so many memories because I used to travel with the family down to Toronto to see them in the contests and stuff like that.
Wow. Well, blessings to the family. Yeah, it really does. It really does.
Yeah. All right, on to our next story. This one comes to us from MJ Biz Daily, and it tells us that Canadian recreational cannabis sales fell for the second straight month.
Oh my
I
goodness.
don't know.
Consumer sales of recreational cannabis products in November 2022 fell in almost every Canadian province and major city. That's according to New Stats Canada data.
Yeah, overall, the country saw a 4.3% monthly decline in adult use sales to $373 million, million in November, marking the second straight monthly decline.
Wow. Ontarians bought $147 million worth of recreational cannabis products in November. That's 4.2% less than the month before. Woo!
Yep. On a dollar basis, Ontario led all provinces with $6.5 million less in recreational cannabis sales in November compared to the previous month. And in Alberta, sales fell 6% to $66.4 million. That marks a 4.2 million sales decline from October.
6% in BC too.
Yeah.
Just down. Interesting.
Yeah.
It doesn't say why though. It tells about, it gives all of the data, but it doesn't suggest why. According to them, slowing more quickly than expected. Interesting. Why do you think that
Yeah. You can
it's
see the
slowing
numbers
down?
there, eh? You can see the numbers there. How actually Newfoundland and Labrador, they're the only ones that didn't suffer. They'll say we got no change.
Most of them are down. Manitoba's down. Even Prince Edward Island is down.
Yeah. Yukon fell 10%. And Toronto continued to lead Canadian cities in sales. Sales in Ontario capital amounted to $47 million.
It shows all the different percentages and showing them. Ooh, look how far down Quebec went. Gatineau, Quebec, minus 10%.
10%. Didn't sell enough figs.
What's going on? What's going on, you guys? They're just down. Maybe the price has gone down. Maybe they were cutting prices or something, or just sales overall.
Just sales overall have
disappointing. Canada, go smoke more weed. What's going on?
All right. This next story comes to us from Mississauga. Headline says advocates to Mississauga Council allow cannabis stores. Yes, Mississauga, one of the largest cities in the area, doesn't allow stores.
No.
You see there in the picture? See that tower in the picture? That's part of the city hall. Yeah. I can remember because I used to live in Mississauga. Where these buildings are, I remember the cornfields.
Wow.
Yeah. Cornfields were there at one time.
Horse and buggies.
Yeah.
Mississauga Council is scheduled to hear again from cannabis retail advocates this Wednesday, over a year and a half after cannabis stores were last denied by city officials in 2021.
The delegates scheduled include Cyrus Hambaz and Brad Scott, who are both executives from cannabis marketing company Canadian Clinical Cannabinoids, and Rihanna Ford, a cannabis event specialist from Mississauga, according to their provided presentation.
At previous meetings, a majority of council voted against allowing retailers, with some, including Ward 5 Councillor Carolyn Parrish, raising concerns about the city having limited controls over how many cannabis stores could pop up and their locations under provincial rules.
Yeah, in an email, Parrish told the Mississauga News her position hasn't changed. Okay, so how do you control the illicit stores?
Yeah.
They're going on.
Right?
Yeah. It says that an added concern is regarding the close downs of many outlets that have been allowed to open in clusters. I have concerns that many people have invested life savings and assumed debt to open a shop that then goes under because of the saturations of stores in certain locations.
Well, retail cannabis has been voted down each time at council. The idea was gaining traction, including with Mayor Bonnie Crombie, who voted for allowing the stores in 2021.
Yeah, she says, I support it. It's because it's a legitimate business. Exactly. Well, according to the latest numbers from the Alcohol Gaming Commission of Ontario, 348 municipalities in the province has opted in to allow retail cannabis stores. 66 opted out, including Caledon, Oakville, Vaughan, and neighboring cities. Brampton and Toronto allow the cannabis retail stores.
I get it now. I was in Oakville recently and I actually said to somebody there, where's all the cannabis stores? I usually see them everywhere. And there was none.
None.
That's what it looks like. That's what the place looks like when there's no, you look around everywhere in big cities, there's cannabis stores almost on every block, but you go into these ghost towns and Marmara where you used to live and there's nothing, it's dry.
Well, let me update you on Marmara.
Do you have an update?
I have an update for you. Those numbers that I just read off, the 300 and some odd and the 66 that didn't, that number is now 65 because in November, the new council in Marmara came into place, and at their meeting in December the 20th, they voted 4-1 to allow the cannabis stores to come into town.
So cool. That's so. Is the dude of cannabis going to open up there? He always was going to. That was the plan.
I don't know. I haven't talked to him to find out.
Hey, dude, they said yes. Come on, dude. They said yes. That's amazing. That's something you worked hard
only when the new council came into place. Only there was the mayor and the deputy mayor stayed in place, and they already had voted yes to the stores. There was 3 that voted no. 2 of those councillors were voted out or were eliminated in the election. So there was only 1 holdover, and he still voted no. The concern was he felt that some of the stores that he visited while he was doing research were a bit tacky.
Oh my goodness. That's his reason?
Yeah. Well, I was really glad though that he said and he spoke for quite, like 5 or 10 minutes on the subject, because every meeting that I attended or watched when it came to the cannabis issue in Marmara, he said, the only words he said was no.
No.
And that was during the vote. He never asked anything, nothing. So I was really glad to see that he said that he went and did some research and checked things out.
Okay. Well, that's very good news. Very good news. Sorry about Mississauga, but very happy to hear this.
On their January, I think it was January 7th meeting, they approved a report by the staff, which was part of their first motion back in December, and it was approved 5-0. And their website says on the report that they have notified the ACCO that they are opting in.
Wonderful.
So there's no question about it.
Very good to hear.
Well, whether anybody comes, I don't know, but
I hope they do.
You don't take that option away, and that's what they did.
Yes.
And I spoke to patients who were looking for it.
Good.
All right, next story, last one of the day. Lancashire Police shut down 70 cannabis farms worth £2 million.
That's a lot of farms. 2,500 plants and 100 kilos of cannabis, saying that the street value of £2 million were seized.
The details emerged as 28 men were jailed for their involvement in the multi-million-dollar raid. It comes after a series of raids in Nelson, Esserington, Pendle, and Burnley.
That's a lot of farms. Lancashire Police said officers were able to identify cannabis farms as the majority of properties had the same brand of door, blinds, and windows.
Brand? Wow. Detective Sergeant Stu Pell says these defendants were part of a sophisticated, organized crime group which invested significant amount of time and money into evading the police.
Wow. So if this is 70, however many plants, that's a lot of people's medicine in the UK, because they're so illegal there. They're so regulated there. So a lot of people are going to be affected by this bust out.
Exactly. And that gun in that picture, it sure in hell don't belong in any garden.
No way. The force said the majority of the properties searching during the 11th month investigation had consistent features, including the similar doors, windows, and cameras.
Oh. These were used by criminals to alert them if a rival drug gang had become aware of the grow and could be preparing to tax them by violently stealing their cannabis.
Wow. Saying also weapons and firearms were taken as part of this bust here.
Yeah.
That's a big
I
one.
always hate when I see guns and stuff involved in cannabis raids.
But I think that was for their protection. They were saying rival gangs were coming to them.
Yeah,
Their cannabis.
Correct, and that's why the gun is there.
Maybe for the gangs.
To protect them.
Yeah.
To protect them from rival gangs, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, we got about 2 minutes here. We talked earlier about the temple in Keene.
We did not smoke your Remo joint yesterday, Al. We did not smoke
that.
We didn't. We'll have to do it another time. You had him on your show last week, and I'm actually interested. You've sold me on it, Al. I'm gonna go find one.
And I know that when we had Remo on Wednesday, we sold Green Irene on one. Before the show was done, she had one on order.
We're all going to do it now.
Yeah, she said she had looked earlier in the local stores and she couldn't find it, and so she ordered one online, and it was there in like a day and a half.
Wow. We're all going to have to get one. Everybody for CBG is going to get one, and then we'll all sesh together for a show or something. We'll put it out there. Yeah, that'll be fun.
I've still got this one. I don't think it'll be around for the next cannabis temple, but no fear.
Gone before the end of the month. Okay, we'll put it on the list. Next cannabis temple will get one.
Yes. Well, the store ordered more. They arrive tomorrow.
Yes.
All right. Anything else you want to talk before we go?
Have a great day.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. That's our report for January the 23rd, 2023. And we'd like to say thanks to our sponsors, legacy420.com, as well as the Camelford Lifestyle Shop. And don't forget, you can always, if you miss a report, you can always catch it at on the Pace Radio Network's website page. And also, don't forget tonight, Token Talks. I'm actually filling in tonight. It's Green Irene and myself. I'm filling in for Cindy. So tune into that broadcast tonight at 7 o'clock. Other than that, we'll see you all then. Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partners 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.